We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio
and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness, brilliant.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Good evening. Headliners is next. First, the news headlines and the main story. The Bank of England has launched a government bond buying programme as it takes emergency action to stabilise the UK's economy. The bank announced it's buying £65 billion worth of bonds to prevent borrowing costs from spiralling out of control. The intervention follows the government's tax-cutting plan set out in the mini-budget last week. But Financial Secretary to the Treasury, Andrew Griffiths, said today the government denies it's responsible for the financial markets being in turmoil, instead blaming it on the war in Ukraine.
Every major economy is dealing with exactly these same issues. And the Bank of England has made this timely intervention, doing what it should do, what the government should do, what the Chancellor and I are focused on is delivering that economic growth plan, which is ultimately what's going to help people. It's going to give people the confidence. It's going to create jobs in the economy and keep people in work so that they can make it through the winter, benefit from that protection in energy and continue to protect our standard of living.
But the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has been saying the plans are irresponsible. In fact, he and Scotland's First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, are both demanding Parliament be recalled immediately.
The government has clearly lost control of the economy. And unlike other situations where it may be a world event, an unexpected event that causes this sort of crisis, this is self-inflicted. This was made in Downing Street last Friday. And for what? For uncosted tax breaks for those earning hundreds of thousands of pounds. And so what the government needs to do now is recall Parliament and abandon this budget before any more damage.
Let's take you to the United States now, where Hurricane Ian has been making landfall this evening and has touched down in southwestern Florida tonight. The Category 4 storm, which means catastrophic damage is likely, is reaching winds barreling at up to 150 miles an hour. It's so bad, sharks have been blown inland. The US Coast Guard is searching for 23 people missing as well after a Cuban migrant boat sank off the coast of Stock Island. The governor of Florida is warning local people there'll be power cuts for millions, and he's also urging everyone to take shelter.
There will be debris in the air and flooding powerful enough to move cars around, so please do not be outside during this storm. If you're in those southwest Florida counties, you need to be sheltering in place.
Well, here train drivers are set to stage more strikes in October as part of a long-running dispute over pay, jobs and conditions. Members of the RMT, ASLEF, Unite and TSSA will stage a coordinated walkout this Saturday. A reduced timetable's been published with only 11% of rail services expected to run, and some areas will have no trains at all. Network Rail says passengers should expect significant disruption and only travel if they absolutely have to. That's it. You're up to date on TV, online and on your radio via DAB+. You're with GB News, the People's Channel, where time now for headliners.
Good evening, I'm Andrew Doyle. Welcome to Headliners, where we run through tomorrow's newspapers. And joining me tonight, of course, as ever, two comedians, Leo Kearse and the big dog, Nick Dixon. Now, let's start with tomorrow's front pages. We're going to start with the Daily Mail here. They lead with prison X-ray finds phone hidden in Lawrence killer's body. It's a bizarre story. One of the killers of Stephen Lawrence. There has been a discovery of a secret concealed mobile phone due to an X-ray. We're going to move on to the Daily Telegraph next. And pension funds crisis forces $60 billion bailout by bank. We will, of course, be covering that. The front page of the Independent next. Missing. Have you seen this PM? The markets are in turmoil. The Bank of England has stepped in to prevent a pensions crisis, but there's still no sign of Liz Truss. They're nailing their colours to the mast there. Front page of The Guardian, and this will be, of course, our top story. Very much a recurring theme. Banks $65 billion scramble to avert financial crisis. The Financial Times leads with Bank of England unleashes $65 billion bid to avert crisis in debts market. And then we're going to move on now to the Metro. And there we go. Liz Truss, a Rish best served cold. Let Liz own the moment. And this is about the revelation that Sunak will not be attending the annual conference next week. Moving on finally to the Star. Kwasi meets Britain's best banking brains. So does anyone have a clue what I'm doing? Very cruelly, they've added a red nose to the Chancellor there. That's not very fair, is it? Anyway, those are the front covers. We're going to kick off with Thursday's Guardian now, and Bank of England here to save the day. Nick?
Yeah, so the Bank of England have stepped in. People are calling it an unparalleled, unprecedented, dramatic intervention. So basically, they bought a load of bonds. They were scheduled to sell the bonds, but now they've bought bonds because they're trying to stabilise the market following this fairly much criticised mini-budget, which everyone's panicking about because of the extra debt incurred by the mini-budget. So the Bank of England have decided they have to step in. And, of course, we just had the IMF, who also made an intervention saying that this budget was going to increase inequality, which sounded like an ideological statement to me. But so it's the government is at odds with the Bank of England, not for the first time, but to a new degree, I would say. And some people say the Bank of England should have raised interest rates long ago, and it's their fault. Other people are blaming this new budget, and that's broadly.
And what about the Chancellor? I mean, he seems quite nonchalant about all of this. I mean, he was quoted as saying, "Well, the markets will respond as they will." You know, this idea that they're just going to have to kind of ride it out and get over this. Because they're easily spooked, aren't they, the markets?
Yeah, they are. But in theory, they've done a lot of good things that should help the markets. But the Bank of England's a bit worried because whereas interest rates have barely moved, right? We all know they've been zero for about 10 years. But then they've suddenly moved about 1%, which doesn't seem that much, but in the current context where they haven't moved for ages, everyone's panicking because then the mortgages have been pulled, as we've seen, and then suddenly you might find yourself on what's it called, the fixed rate, and the standard variable rate, where your mortgage can be suddenly over 5% in some cases. So that's why everyone's panicking.
Well, they're terrified for the loss of their pensions, aren't they?
There's that as well, yes.
Yeah. Leo, talk us through this, because when the IMF gets involved, doesn't that just spook the markets even more? Well, isn't that the case?
Britain famously had to go to the IMF in the 70s for a bailout after conditions that weren't too dissimilar to this. But yeah, I think this is a bit of a mania. at the moment. We've seen the pound plummet to near parity with the dollar. But then, all currencies, the yen, the euro, a lot of currencies aren't doing too well against the dollar. But yeah, it doesn't seem, it's weird, this mini budget, I mean, it didn't add a huge amount of debt. I mean, I guess it's more the signal that, we're not going in the right direction. I think what they should have done is announce public sector cuts before they announce the tax cuts.
Right.
So show that they're balancing the books before they give people some tax back.
Is it, as Truss and Kwarteng seem to be suggesting, that this is just a wobble in the market and it will restabilise, and they're sort of doubling down, they're saying we're going to push through with this? I mean, it is notable, isn't it, that when the pound dropped that all-time low and then the IMF made its statement criticising the government, then it was building up again. Yeah. And then it dropped back down again. So, in a sense, maybe it is just a case of riding this out, right?
Yeah, and for the IMF to criticise inequality when they've been so proactive in encouraging inequality in so many parts of the world.
Those interventions went really well.
But yeah, I mean, I think it is a wobble, and a week's a long time in politics. And this time next week, will we be talking about this, or will we be eating next door's Labrador? It's hard to tell.
I do wonder though whether because we're on the Labour conference is on at the moment, and we're getting a lot of their reactions, of course. And the focus isn't so much on the Tories. Maybe when the Tory party conference comes about, we're going to be seeing more of people being able to defend this. And maybe that will help stabilise matters.
And also, by the time of the Tory party conference, they might have some proper plans in place to actually slash the public sector. There's so much they could cut there. I mean, every equality, diversity and inclusion department can go immediately.
Yeah, I mean, there is an ideological element. The economic element is slightly above my pay grade, but the ideological element is that the IMF have been criticised for sticking to the sort of Gordon Brown-esque approach to the economy. And I know from talking to people at the Bank of England that they've said things like, people like Steve Baker are space cadets, so they don't exactly favour the laissez-faire, Milton Friedmanite economics that Kwarteng's being accused of now.
Yeah. Well, you may be above your pay grade, Nick, but I'm interested in what you think about this. Do you think that it is the case that if we reduce the top rate of tax, more money goes into the Treasury? Does that? I mean, is that history? History seems to suggest that is the way it goes.
Doesn't it?
It does sound.
I sort of wonder if anyone's going to. These are sort of vaguely Thatcherite policy. Everyone said, "Oh, it's conservative. It's ultra conservative." It's not even like it's Thatcherite. If we want to be strict, and even then, Thatcher was much more complex. But I want to know: are governments even going to be allowed to do Thatcherite policies? Because if the IMF's stepping in, if the Bank of England's stepping in, are we even allowed to have a conservative?
I don't know why they're stepping in. No one asked them. They've got nothing to do with the running of this country.
And also this idea that we've suddenly slashed tax to this incredibly low level. Like we had higher tax. There's a higher tax burden than in Norway. We're not talking about America, Norway, which is, an ultra-socialist, high-tax country.
But tell me this, Leo, is it not the case that, in a sense, it's bad PR to scrap the caps on bankers' bonuses? That feels like you're just giving a gift to the left.
I mean, I guess...
Like, no one likes the bankers and their bonuses, do they?
I guess, I mean, if you're... But the thing is, I mean, if you slash the caps on bonuses, it encourages bankers to move back.
Yeah, that's the idea, isn't it? Is that actually going to... Does that work in reality?
I've actually heard... I've heard people that follow me on Twitter saying that they're going to move from Scotland to England. So they're going to cross the border to get the lower tax threshold.
That's your fan base, Leo, and they're all very anti-Scottish. Scottish people, aren't they? Let's be honest, that's what it is. Anyway, Wednesday's Daily Mail now. A confident Keir leaves the Labour conference. Leo, we're hearing a lot from Keir Starmer, aren't we? Yeah, he's taking advantage of this situation, rather, isn't he?
Yeah, the Daily Mail says he's gloating. I don't know if he's gloating. That's maybe like, Daily Mail phraseology. But he's insisted changes in the air today, as he claimed the sterling crisis will help him win over voters. So a bullish Sir Keir said he hopes to emulate Tony Blair's historic election victories after a poll suggested Labour is 17 points ahead of the Tories. And things certainly, look dicey for the Tories. But obviously the next election will be in 2024. I don't think Liz Truss is going to call a snap election at the moment.
There, that's not bullish. Is it? He's not bullish. I mean,
it's really hard to tell with him.
I watched the actual clip where he was making these comments, and it didn't strike me as gloating, actually. Yeah. But he does make this point that it is self-inflicted. He thinks that the economic catastrophe is self-inflicted, and so there is a sense in which, whether he's gloating or not, he can spin this to his advantage, can't he?
Yeah, and I mean, the unfortunate fact of the matter is, even though we've had, 12, 13 years of a Tory government, ostensibly Tory government anyway, the seeds of this catastrophe were sowed by Gordon Brown and his, ridiculous quantitative easing, which, every pound printed steals money from pounds in circulation. And the ironic thing is, normally we've got economic catastrophe, a falling pound, surging inflation, and the IMF criticising Britain. You can usually vote Tory to fix it. And we don't have that option.
Nick, what do you think? Do you think that it is the case? I mean, the way that you hear people talk at the Labour conference at the moment, it isn't crossing any of their minds that they could potentially lose the next election. There is so much confidence. But they would do that, wouldn't they?
know, they're all singing. They're singing Angels. Did you see that clip? And they're singing the national anthem for once, even more shocking.
They should never sing Angels. Only if people are drunk should they do
that was Wes Streeting. But yeah, look. So Starmer's saying clearly he's going to emulate Tony Blair, and he's coming out, he's being very clear about it. He's said because he won elections. Fair enough. What's worrying is that he's doing what Blair did. Superficial patriotism. When we had Britpop, we had Cool Britannia. Now we've got I'm standing by the flag, singing the national anthem. But really, it's going to be all lefty policies anyway. But it's going to be.
Is it? I mean, he's really trying to distance himself from Corbyn, isn't he?
He's superficially distancing himself. And if you look at what he says here,
I don't know if it's superficial.
I believe it is. He says he says that the most exciting thing was children being born. So he's advocating family. So he's trying to appeal to the normal patriotic people in England who like families and stuff. But we know he won't. Will Labour really govern like that though? And the other thing I noted, he said we're firmly on the centre ground, common sense politics. I very much doubt Labour are common sense politics, but on the centre question, does it really exist? You know, the terms left and right, as you know, they're perhaps outmoded anyway. They come from the French Revolution, so that's pretty old now. And
a while ago.
Yeah, late 18th century. And then you've got the fact that people from Dominic Cummings to Peter Hitchens have said this centre ground doesn't exist, because you take the average voter in England, what do they want? They like the NHS, but they want to be tough on immigration. So they're a strange mix that doesn't fit into right left. So the centre ground, does it even really exist? Or just gestures?
But then there's nobody for those people to vote for, really, because I mean, if you vote Tory, you're going to get high immigration because they want high immigration for low cost labour for the businesses, and if you vote Labour, you're going to get high immigration because they want them to vote for them.
Yeah, and that's the irony, that after all this time of Tory government, people just want any change. You know how it goes in this country? We get bored, we want to swing to the other side. Although, as Leo says, it wasn't very conservative government anyway, so we're going to swing towards socialism. Normally I'd say they'll get a dose of socialism and see what it's like, but we've kind of already had that anyway. So I don't know, even more socialism.
I'm not convinced you're going to swing towards socialism with Starmer particularly, but also I'm not convinced that he's really able to emulate Blair. He doesn't have the charisma, for one thing. I just don't think he's got that.
It'll be a poor man's Blair, which is even worse. But when I say socialism, we had lockdowns, which were already like a kind of weird communist policy, and then Starmer wanted even more lockdowns. On tax and so on, there'll be even more socialist. That's what.
Okay.
And regarding charisma, I mean, I think most of us are intensely relaxed about the prospect of somebody being serious after having Boris Johnson, who's all charisma and no diligence.
Charisma doesn't mean incompetence necessarily. You can have both. It's just politicians generally
He's
don't.
citing being calm and confident. That's supposed to be Truss's pitch as well, but no one's really noticed her yet, as far as I can.
Well, we've got to move on now, and we're going to stick with the Mail. Keir Starmer saying it as it is. Now, this has been the controversy of the week, hasn't it?
Yeah, this is really interesting. This is Keir Starmer brands Labour MP Rupa Huq as racist after she is suspended, and says sorry to Kwasi Kwarteng for describing him as superficially black. We've probably all seen the video. Absolutely shocking. She said that if you listened on the radio, you wouldn't even know he was black, as if he was supposed to be singing drill rap music or something. Absolutely absurd. It's what we often call the bigotry of low expectations. She's saying if you speak well, that means, as Joe Biden said, you ain't black. You know, and he said if you vote Republican, you ain't black. So what they do is, if you don't align with their ideology, instead of saying, oh, people of different races have different opinions, they say you can't be black then.
But they do literally say that. They suggest that they take it for granted, the Democrats in America and the Labour here, that ethnic minority people will just naturally vote for them. And it is a sort of mild form of racism, isn't it?
It's like when people say you're not gay, Andrew, because you don't like the LGBTQ plus stuff. And Douglas Murray says you lose your gay card, you can lose your black card.
That's what they said about Peter Thiel in America, the entrepreneur, when he appeared at the Republican conference. And a gay magazine in America, I think it was Out magazine, said that Peter Thiel might sleep with men, but he's not gay. Because he supports the Republicans. This is incredible stuff. This is identity politics gone mad.
Oh, it's so patronising, and it shows the sort of left's focus on identity and putting people in boxes rather than treating them as individuals. And of course, in the UK in 2022, as the Tory party have shown, there's loads of people of all ethnic backgrounds who speak in a variety of different ways. There isn't like one particular way. And I know Rupa Huq herself seems like a very, very. I think Keir Starmer is accurate in calling her a racist. She's written an article in The Guardian where she described, I think, the Labour Party as being hideously white.
Yeah, it was the chairs of the select committee. She said we're hideously white.
It's hideously white. That's a strange term to use.
Hideously white. That's a racist thing. So you go. Is her apology sincere when she's got form in this area? The one thing I want to say, I want to give Starmer some credit now, is that he suspended her so quickly. Obviously, she's ruining his big moment. You've got this conference. You're thinking, I'm dead set to to win the election. Then someone, then Labour people come out and say what they actually think. It's a nightmare.
yeah. After you've spent so long trying to get them to not say what they think.
On the other hand, though, I mean, she's not stupid. She's got a PhD, and you just kind of think, because I heard her speak, and it sounded like a really stupid thing to say.
Yeah.
But is it just the case that, in the heat of the moment, she was on a platform, she was talking spontaneously, it wasn't a pre-written speech? Can we cut her some slack and say she just sort of misspoke?
No.
No, because she spoke the truth. She spoke what she really thought. And I love it when people expose what they really think. I mean, right now we've got a Labour Party who think that Kwasi Kwarteng isn't black and Eddie Izzard is a woman. So, this is the sort of...
Right, and that Guardian article was from December 2021, so she obviously thinks this stuff over time.
OK, well, on to Thursday's Guardian now. Some shocking revelations about mental health care in the NHS. Leo, what's this about?
Yeah, so an NHS mental health hospital, there's been somebody filming undercover for a BBC investigation, and the film staff mocking and slapping patients. So police are investigating allegations that vulnerable patients were bullied, humiliated and verbally abused by staff at one of the UK's biggest NHS mental health hospitals, as well as the mocking and slapping. There was pinching. This was an investigation by BBC Panorama at the Edenfield Centre near Manchester. So
I mean, it's just unforgivable, isn't it? This kind of just abusing some of the most vulnerable people in.
We've seen this happen so often, though. When people are in a position of power and there's not much oversight or checks on their power, they will behave like this. Whether that's an old folks' home, a mental hospital, a prison. So I mean, it's sad, but it's always going to happen. Unfortunately, the NHS is quite.
I think it can. I mean, obviously, there's always going to be aberrations. There's always going to be people who are going to abuse positions of power. But the stats in this article are quite shocking, because they say this involves more than 25 members of staff.
Yeah.
That feels almost, if you want to use the word, institutional.
So it was a culture. There's a culture amongst the staff of this sort of gang mentality, and they joined in. It's not as if somebody would hide it from the other staff. They do it. They do the abuse, and the staff would be watching and laughing.
Which is presumably how the videos got out, I guess.
Yeah, well, I assume that's why they did the investigation in the first place.
Yeah.
But yeah, it shows how dehumanised the
do you have any thoughts on this one, Nick?
No, just other than we worship the NHS in this country, but the reality is, for every person you speak to who say the NHS saved my life, you also hear these horrific stories. So it's mixed, isn't it?
I clap for them.
OK, Thursday's Telegraph now. This is a great news, actually. This is a medical breakthrough, Nick.
Alzheimer's drug slows cognitive decline in historic breakthrough. So this is the drug. If you take lecanemab, it turns out it can reduce progress of Alzheimer's by 27%. They studied 1,800 people. It's not clear yet if it will be on the market soon enough to help Joe Biden, but it is a serious breakthrough.
That's a huge number. That's a huge reduction.
It's a big thing, and it's to do with how what is it called, the amyloids. It targets the amyloids. I don't know the science exactly.
The proteins that build up on the neurons or something.
Well, isn't the key thing here that a lot of people who are suffering symptoms of dementia don't go to the doctor about it because there are no cures for it? But now this might suggest that more people will take that opportunity. This is actually something that could change.
Yeah, if you get the treatment early enough. I mean, it's not like a complete cure, and it won't help everybody, but it does show a pretty substantial reduction in a lot of people. So yeah, I mean, the thing is, a lot of people don't even notice their dementia until it's quite advanced, because you can misinterpret signs of dementia as just I'm being slightly forgetful.
And Alzheimer's is one of the cruelest diseases. I mean, people forget their loved ones, call them by different names, some quite hurtful things, inadvertently hurtful.
Yeah, there was a breakthrough a couple of years ago where they discovered that it's almost like type 3 diabetes. So overproduction of insulin and having too much sugar in your body can advance it.
OK, well, that's it for part one. And coming up, we have got petulant Putin, indefinite jail terms, and Americans being conscripted into the Russian army. See you in 2 minutes.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio
and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GBNews with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, brilliant.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners with me, Andrew Doyle. I'm joined tonight by the comedy giant, that is Leo Kearse. He's not funny, he's just tall. And the big dog himself, Nick Dixon. Enjoy yourself, ladies. On to Thursday's Independent now, with an instance where dual nationality might not be so ideal.
So US officials have said that all Americans remaining in Russia should plan on leaving the country immediately amid fears that dual nationals could be conscripted into fighting against Ukraine. There's other countries have just come out and said this as well. I think Romania and Bulgaria have also warned their nationals to leave. We've seen this with people in Crimea have been drafted to conscripted to fight in the war, even though they're essentially fighting against their own country, because Crimea was annexed by Russia in 2014. But there are worries that, it's not just about conscription. This could signal a possible future escalation that the authorities think is coming in the conflict as it moves towards a total all-out war rather than the sort of special military
Doesn't
operation.
this suggest, so much of Putin's sort of bravado is all about his strength. This seems like a sign of weakness, a sign of desperation. You've got a build-up of people trying to escape conscription on the Russia-Georgia border. At the moment, people don't want to be fighting in the war, let alone if they're half American.
And they're just grabbing people from anywhere. It's insane. They've got so they've conscripted old people who've done some sort of military service. But these guys, I've seen photos. These guys are 60.
They're putting
it looks like Dad's army, like Vlad's army.
Pitchforks in the hands of grannies, aren't they?
Yeah, well, that's what they did in World War II, and they've also with the people that are being arrested who are protesting against the war, they get sent to jail and then handed conscription papers. So they're getting anti-war protesters, arresting them, handing them conscription papers to go to the front and fight. But they're obviously not going to be the most motivated nationalistic soldiers.
Exactly. Turning to Thursday's Metro now. Putin is not a fan of the blame game, Nick.
Yeah, Russia reacts with usual petulance to being blamed for Nord Stream pipe blast, Metro says. But this is fascinating. So obviously there was the leak in the Nord Stream 2, and it was in 3 separate places. So everyone says this is sabotage. Now the big question is who did it? So of course Russia are going to be blamed, and I'm not going to take a side at the moment. I'm just going to objectively lay it out for you and say that. And there's the picture of it there. So the question is who did it?
Somebody should drop a Zippo on that.
Some people say that it's obviously Russia, and they say they've done this in the past. For example, they had 8.4 million pounds of gas a day that they were just burning off.
I remember this, but they said this was just nothing to do with them. And
they did that rather than export
wear and tear.
Yeah, and then there's the idea that actually they're just proving that they could blow up the new Baltic pipe if they wanted. There's this new Baltic pipe, Norway to Poland. They're saying we can blow up pipes, by the way. That's that theory. Then there's a theory that people like Tucker Carlson have shared on Fox News, where he's saying is this the US? Because Biden said, we have ways of doing this. He said, if Russia invades, we will make sure Nord Stream 2 doesn't happen. And Victoria Nuland, I think she's called, part of his administration, said the same thing very clearly. And then the journalist said, well, how will you do that? And Biden was basically like, we have ways, wink. So, and also this guy, Radek Sikorsky, said, thank you, USA. He's very close to Biden. He tweeted, thank you, USA. That's the case for the US, or part of it. Then people say, well, could Poland have done it? Because they've got various motivations. Then there's the idea that, did Ukraine do it? Because if you look at Ukraine, they don't want their pipeline to be replaced. They lose billions if that happens. Also, obviously, they're at war with Russia already, and so it's sort of, all bets are off. And also, they also have been given underwater drones by the US, so they could actually do it. And of course, they don't want Germany to sort of call off the war. They don't want to, start negotiating with Russia. So this stops Russia having this negotiating tool. So it's very complicated who did it. And of course, the standard thing is to say, obviously, Russia. But it could be Ukraine with a bit of US helping them out or something like that. I don't know.
Leo, what do you think? Reverend Green in the study?
Well, I actually think it was Leo because he wants to advance his fracking agenda. He just wants to get rid of all the pipelines.
Surely the obvious solution is Occam's razor and everything. It's Russia.
Yeah,
flexing.
But then again, I mean, a defining feature of this war is that trade has continued between all the countries involved in it throughout the war. So, Russia's still sending gas to Ukraine, Ukrainian homes and factories. Ukraine is still paying for that gas. Russia's still sending gas to Europe, and there's still lots of other pipelines. So,
but let's say it was Russia.
The two Nord Stream pipelines were not. One of them wasn't operational.
One wasn't operational anyway.
And the one that's been blown up was at lower capacity. So it's not like it's a huge,
But what's the benefit to Russia if it is Russia? What's the benefit?
Well, that's the question. And there doesn't seem to be an obvious benefit, which is why when you say Occam's razor is that it's Biden because he said he'd do it. You see what I mean? So Occam's Biden.
Yeah.
Occam's Biden. Occam's razor would say that it's not Russia because what is their motivation other than threatening to blow up this Baltic pipe is one explanation.
I don't think Biden meant I'm going to blow it up.
No, probably not. He probably meant I'm going to talk to Ukraine and they'll do it.
Right? Well, we've got to move on now to Thursday's Telegraph and a very 2022 update to the Virgin Atlantic uniforms, Leo.
Yeah, so Virgin Atlantic, the airline, is allowing male cabin crew and pilots to wear skirts and female counterparts to wear trousers so that staff can express their true identity at work, which is much more important now than actually doing your job.
Are they going to dance as well like that? Is that?
Yeah, they've got this advert where,
well.
Obviously they're all... I mean, it's an advert in 2022, so there's not going to be any straight white men in it. But yeah, so we've got them all there spinning around, being all non-binary and stuff.
Were there ever that many straight white men on airlines, to be fair?
Yeah,
I don't want them to behave like that while they're flying. I'd be worried about that. You tip the plane, for one thing.
I just want the plane to be safe, to fly through the air and land safely, right. And I want to be handed a gin and tonic. I don't want all this prancing, and I don't want to know your pronouns. I don't care what your pronouns are. Your pronouns aren't for you. Why do you think you get to choose your pronouns? It's like a nickname. You don't get to choose your own nickname. Your pronouns are what you look like. And also, there's only 2 genders and a whole bunch of narcissistic, mentally ill
people. To be fair, Leo, Nick did choose his nickname, Big Dog.
How did that
stick?
Did someone else? Our producer came up with it.
Okay.
But I will say that maybe it was me. I will say that this thing about they want to make sure customers are addressed by their preferred pronouns. The problem is you're going to have it's going to be kicking off in the sky. You're going to have microaggressions in the sky. You know how everything's more tense on an airplane. You always see things kicking off.
Yeah.
Imagine how it's going to lead to more and more arguments, but you're stuck in the air.
I'm sorry, I don't understand this quote. It says, we want to ensure our customers are addressed by their preferred pronouns.
Yeah.
If you address people by their pronouns, you're going to sound really patronising. Does she want a gin and tonic?
Yeah.
It's insane. People you don't address people by their gendered pronouns.
Yeah, but they do sort of say sir, don't they, on air? They go past and they say, are you OK, sir, or do you want to drink?
That's not a pronoun, though, is it?
No, but they won't be able to say that anymore, will
Human.
they?
Are you OK, humanoid?
You won't be able to say sir, will they? They'll say, It's,
customer.
It's a bit, innit? Because it is a problem, because in the past, air hostesses were beautiful women, weren't they, with slightly chaotic lives. And now... I didn't even have a finish that sentence. I was say that bit.
Well, on that note, let's move on now to Thursday's Guardian, where locked up for life might mean just that.
Oh, yeah. This is call to re-sentence 3,000 prisoners trapped under indefinite jail terms.
What's an indefinite jail term?
Well, it's this weird scheme they came up with. You can actually be recalled at any time, even if you've been released. They came up with it in 2005 to detain serious offenders who are perceived as being a risk to the public. But then it proved to be terrible. They expected about 900 people to be jailed under it, but it was 8,711. And it's just a nightmare, and it leads to incredibly...
Well, that sounds like a huge failure of bureaucracy, doesn't it? Because if this is intended to recall serious offenders, dangerous offenders, and have the legislation to do that, why are so many minor offenders being recalled under this scheme?
Well, yeah, we do have,
Leo,
we do have to quickly acknowledge that it is also The Guardian, so the real story might be about sewage in Wales or something. We don't know if it's accurate because it's from The Guardian. But yeah, go on, Leo, what are you going to say?
Well, yeah, I mean, I just think they say the indefinite nature of these jail terms under the imprisonment for public protection scheme has contributed to feelings of hopelessness and despair. Oh, heaven forbid that somebody should actually feel bad going to prison. I thought everybody should be elated. You know what I mean? You can't, like, it's supposed to be. You're supposed to feel bad. You're going to prison.
No, but
you
the
did
idea
something
that...
wrong.
But if you've served your time and then you can be just recalled at any point.
Yeah, but prison isn't just there to as a time served thing. So people have to be eligible for release. They have to show that they're not a threat on the outside. And obviously, there's a huge number of people in prison who have mental health issues. And most IPP offenders, these offenders that they're talking about, are institutionalised and have complex mental health needs and have lost faith in the system that's meant to rehabilitate them.
So this is about risk to the public.
This is about risk to the public, and also where they're best place to get the treatment. So, you know, prison could be the best place for them.
Although it does sound like a lot of people are getting caught up in this net that shouldn't be there.
Well, they shouldn't have committed any crime then.
You know what solves all of it? Death penalty.
For everything.
Ultra-conservative Nick Dixon there. We're going to stick with The Guardian now. And if I were a betting man, I'd say this story isn't good news for some.
Well, yeah, apparently English football clubs have been taking a cut of the money that fans lose with the bookmaker Sky Bet, The Guardian has revealed, prompting accusations that they're exploiting supporters and gambling addicts.
Can you explain what... Because I thought Sky Bet was the computer in Terminator 2 that leads to the apocalypse.
But it's achieved self-awareness and it's decided instead of taking over the world, it's just going to go into Premier League betting. It's more lucrative than nuking Moscow.
The film wouldn't have been so good. Yeah. So what happens here? How does this system work?
So Sarah Connor is betting on Mansfield United. No, basically, so people can place bets on Sky Bet.
Yeah.
And so
and they get a cut, do they?
Yeah, the clubs are acting as affiliates. So you click on a link on their website or whatever, and or in their email, and it takes you to the Sky Bet, and then they get a cut of any money that people lose, which obviously is profit for the gambling company.
It's appalling, this. It's appalling because what you have on the football, you have all these adverts constantly on the football with Ray Winstone going, "Ever gamble, son." It's like, it's constantly pushing gambling, which is obviously incredibly dangerous. And he even says, gamble responsibly, which is the most absurd oxymoron I've ever heard. It's like murder moderately or something. I mean,
drink, drive carefully.
Right. If you look up the definition of gambling, it's take risky action. I mean, you can't gamble responsibly, Ray. And then what they're saying is once Ray is convinced you to gamble, they're going to take a cut of your losings. It's completely disgusting.
Yeah.
I didn't realise that people gambled on football.
Yeah. And
it's massive.
The clubs are making big profits. I mean, we've seen some big sums in world football, but so one League Two club made £5,000 in a year from this, so
well,
they're going to have a new stadium.
Thursday's Independent, the Danish football team making a powerful stance against the Qatar World Cup. Nick, what's this about?
This is pathetic. So this is from Hummel, who are the sponsor of the Denmark football team, and they've released this kit designed to protest against Qatar.
I think we've got an image of the kit.
Oh, good.
So this
Have a look. Well, that's actually one of the kits. That's the red one, which they're saying has toned-down logos, which what they've done to stop human rights abuses is make the logo slightly more muted. Then there's the black kit, which I don't know if we have, but the black kit, they did this Instagram post about, and they said, black, the colour of mourning. But it's the third kit, so they're not going to use it anyway, probably. And the idea is that they're going to Qatar. They're not going to boycott or anything like that. They're just going to go anyway, but with a black third kit and a slightly muted first kit. It's completely ridiculous virtues.
But isn't it the case that some sort of protest should be offered, given that lots of migrants have died in the construction of the stadium at Qatar?
Yeah.
And, you know, they don't have a great record on human rights.
But the slaves that are dying in the world right now, there's 49 million slaves in the world right now, way more than at the height of the transatlantic slave trade, but people don't care about them because it's happening now, and it's generally not white people, you know, doing it. So you can't really protest against it without looking racist.
But don't you think, Leo, That's surely when, we've got footballers in this country wearing their sort of rainbow-coloured lanyards and football laces or whatever, but where, we have a country where we have gay equality, so that doesn't really help. When in a country where it doesn't exist, wouldn't that be the place to do all this stuff?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, people are great at getting virtue signalling points for themselves by protesting for something that's already been achieved in a place where it's safe to do so. If they went to Qatar and all did a human centipede and all dressed in rainbow colours and took the knee for slaves there and
that would actually...
maybe plant a tombstones all over the pitch for the people that died making the pitch.
Yeah, look, Harry Kane's wearing like a tiny rainbow armband is what he's going to do. It's meaningless.
Yeah.
And Denmark, this is the black square all over again. Do you remember when everyone had to post the black square on Instagram? Remember after the George Floyd thing and all that? This is all this is. They're having a black third kit. It's completely empty virtue signaling. Boycott the tournament, or we shouldn't have even had the tournament in Qatar.
Yeah, well, how about...
you go there and you're just wearing a slightly muted logo on the kit.
Yeah, how about that? Don't choose a country to host it who have this terrible human rights record.
Yes.
That would solve it.
Yeah.
How about that?
Anyway, and then David Beckham wouldn't get any money.
No, well, there is that. That's it for part 2. Don't go anywhere. Coming up, we're going to be discussing whether the internet is a good surrogate parent, the most powerful man on Earth's alarming cognitive capabilities, the Welsh, and why hoofed animals make the best lovers. Those last two aren't related, by the way. See you in a bit.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England,
Scotland, Wales,
And Northern Ireland. On TV.
on radio,
And online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel. Britain's
News channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm still Andrew Doyle, and they're still Leo Kearse and Nick Dixon. So let's crack on. Looking at Thursday's Mirror, it turns out the internet isn't the best surrogate parent, Nick.
Yeah, parents warned over fears Alexa and Siri are making kids rude and antisocial. Bit late for that, isn't it? I mean, it was the case for several decades. But yeah, the idea is that one thing is they order Siri and Alexa around. They don't even say please and thank you.
You don't have to say please and thank you to Alexa.
But you should have to. And they're introducing a kids version where you can click on a polite mode and you'll have to say please and thank you.
That's a great idea.
It's a great idea because kids are so rude now. I mean, it's not really... I wouldn't say Siri and Alexa are the main culprits. I'd probably say it's educational decline and the sort of general decline in standards in our country. But of course, that's the kind of thing I say. But it's good. And it's also good, by the way, Andrew, to be very polite to robots, because when they take over, they might spare your life.
No, that's absolutely true. I mean, but they're not polite to us. I mean, when you have Alexa, when you ask them something, they don't say, thank you very much for asking. here's the information that you require, sir.
Yeah.
That'd be nice.
I don't even use them because I feel guilty. I think maybe I'm just too northern or humble. You know, like when I feel guilty, like if there's a waiter, so I'm not going to ask a computer to tell me to. I can't. You know what I mean? I feel guilty bossing around.
I don't like them in the house anyway. I did ask whether they were spying.
They spy on you.
No, Alexa said we take your privacy very seriously. That was the response. So I believe her. But she still didn't call me sir, and I want some deference.
That's not a no. I'd rather have a no in that situation. I did see somebody say that it's because it's predominantly female voices. I don't know if you can download a Jerry Sadowitz patch or something for Alexa, where you're actually encouraged to be impolite to it. But it's female voices, and somebody tweeted saying that this means that women are being put in a position of inferiority, and it's reinforcing the paradigm that men order women.
I mean, come on, are we not just reading way too much into all of it? I mean, these academics are also suggesting that these youngsters aren't taught how to read body language because they're speaking to a gadget. They do talk to other human beings, though.
Yeah.
It's not that they just talk to Alexa
Less
all
and
the
less
time.
so. You know what I mean?
No.
These days, Andrew, they don't go outside.
That's not true, Nick.
They have iPads.
Yeah.
There is
They're
that,
not
but they
human in the
also,
way that
they also do
you or
talk
I
to
am.
each other.
They're stuck in front of screens all the time, and then people are like, oh my God, why has my kid got so much boundless energy? It must have ADHD, let's medicate it. It's like, no, it's just been stuck in front of a screen.
I agreed. I'd get rid of the screens for the kids. I think that's not
Let's
fair.
go back to about 1900.
Yeah, give them slates and an abacus
and
if
cholera.
they behave.
Yeah, if they're lucky.
Yeah,
And cholera. They love a bit of cholera.
Thursday's Telegraph, and our chatbots ruining all the fun.
So people who, well, it depends what you consider fun, but people who try to watch illegal porn will have their screens locked with a warning. They'll be blocked and challenged to stop it.
What's a chatbot?
By a chatbot that says they may be breaking the law. A chatbot is this little thing that it's AI, but it sort of talks to you like it's a person.
I think Andrew's from 1900. You seriously don't know what when you're you want customer service or something, you can't speak to anyone, you get a little pop-up that says, are you okay?
Yeah.
And you talk to it.
One of them.
It's basically the same as going through the FAQs yourself, but they put it in a sort of chatbot thing, so you feel like you're talking to somebody.
This says it's about illegal porn.
Illegal porn,
so you shouldn't be searching for illegal porn anyway, should you?
Yeah, you shouldn't be searching for illegal porn, and I can't believe nobody's tried telling people to stop it before when they're doing something illegal.
But it's illegal. So you know it's why would
and it's on Pornhub, which is the world's biggest porn site. But it makes a change from Pornhub actually hosting illegal porn, which they have in the past.
Do they?
They don't. Well, I mean, they've got measures in place to ensure that they don't.
Exactly.
But they have in the past.
Yeah, two things, right?
I would take.
Can I just say quickly? One, this would have helped Neil Parish in the House of Commons when he was looking at his tractors. But that's my one point. But on a very serious note, switching now to a very serious note, this says that it's been backed by police chiefs, the chatbot, because it'll help deter potential offenders before they even commit an offence. But some of these offences we're talking about are looking up child porn.
Yeah.
Now, don't you want to know who those offenders are?
Yeah.
This will block them from even doing it. And they're saying that'll cut down on sort of arrests and things we have, and a general red tape. But surely you want to know who those people are.
Yeah.
Not block them before
Is that
they
not
do
the
it.
point of this, that they can flag?
No, they're saying the point, and this is that it will deter them from even doing it. Even it says, "Do you sure you want to search for this?"
Yeah.
Because you're a paedophile, basically. But shouldn't we sort of let them search for it and then catch them rather than say have a bot saying, "Are you sure you want to search for this?" I mean,
yeah.
Right?
But then, I mean, like if you're looking for, say, for example, off the top of my head, never
Don't
searched
say
for
anything too.
Schoolgirl. That's the most common. Apparently, that's the most common search term. So now are people going to have to say schoolgirl, but just actors over the age of 18 who are pretending, who are wearing it's.
I understand.
Yeah.
I see your point, but let's not get into it too much.
No.
We're on now to the Telegraph. Now, actually, this is a story about Joe Biden, but it doesn't look good, Nick. I don't know how the White House is going to spin this one.
I've seen how this spun out, and I can tell you in a minute, but it's Joe Biden asked if dead Congresswoman is in crowd during speech, and we could probably just go to the video if we have it.
We do have the VT. Let's have a look at this.
And I want to thank all of you here for including bipartisan elected officials like Representative Governor, Senator Braun, Senator Booker, Representative Jackie. Are you here? Where's Jackie? I didn't think she was going to be here to help make this a reality.
So, Nick, we should make clear that Jackie had died a month before.
Yes, when he says, "Where's Jackie?" the answer is dead for a month. Yeah, she's died. So it's very bleak. I mean,
Is that about the same amount of time as Joe Biden's been dead?
Yes. It's very grim. It's grimly funny. It's an international security risk because why is there this guy in charge of... It's kind of like Salieri in Amadeus. It's just this guy who's losing it. He's saying, "Where's Jackie?" It's like a guy in a nursing home in a movie going, "Am I still the president?" You know what I mean? It's like
the issue
it's
is
a tragic
because we don't want to have a go at someone who's suffering from cognitive decline.
No, we do if they're the president.
But the White House is clear that he's not suffering from cognitive decline, in which case we can criticise this, right?
So can I just briefly address your other point when you said, how are they going to spin this? So the press secretary already, Karine Jean-Pierre, has already spun it, and they said, what was going on here? And she said, well, Jackie has been on the top of his mind. She's on top of mind. She kept saying top of mind, which I'm not sure is even a proper phrase.
Yeah.
And she kept saying top of mind. And they're going, yeah, but he said, where's Jackie? And she goes, and at one point she goes, well, I don't know what to say. She was top of mind. You know, it's like, no, that's terrible.
I think that Joe Biden is so close to death he can actually see her.
Yeah, it's worrying that you can't tell the difference between dead people and alive people.
Yeah.
I mean,
of course, it's worrying. I mean, there's been a lot of gaffes, though, hasn't there, from him? And you know, we do have to worry at this point, surely.
Well, as long
That's
as
why you can't tell that Democrats are a dead party.
As long as the people making the decisions and writing the teleprompter, as long as those people, those you know, faceless people who nobody elected, as long as they're doing OK, then I think we can breathe a sigh of relief.
Well, moving on to the Daily Mail. The Welsh now telling us it's their way or the highway. Leo.
So a Welsh driver has refused to pay a £60 parking fine, which was written only in English, as he blasts the parking firm's imperial arrogance. So he's called Mr. Grow. He lives in Powys, and he refused to pay the fine, as all the correspondence was written in English and not in Welsh. So the fine has now been passed on to debt collectors, but previously these parking debt collectors tried to enforce a similar situation. There was a teacher who refused to pay a parking fine because it was only written in English, and he won his case, but he didn't win because of the English language thing. He won because they didn't turn up to court.
Well, if you go, you know, in Wales, all sort of public bodies, government bodies, schools, that kind of thing, they all have to print bilingual documents, but private companies, crucially, don't have to, right?
Correct. This was One Parking Solutions, a private company that's not obliged to do that by law.
Yeah.
So it's the ultimate. It's kind of like a woke thing. It's like can't pay because empire. You know, it's pretty weak.
Well, this guy can read English, right? So I mean, this is like it's not like he can solely speak Welsh.
One step away from reparations for Wales, basically.
Well, they did go through a lot. Anyway,
cheaper.
We've got to move on. This is from the Times, a story about the benefits of weightlifting. So, Nick, this is right up your street as the hench, you know, specimen of manhood that you are.
Thank you very much.
It's time to start cutting, Nick.
Well, I do need to cut the fat. Thank you, Leo. But my strength is unparalleled. So weightlifting once a week can help pensioners live longer. 3 times a week is the ideal. Nick's recommending that. But the Times are saying once a week. Because people sort of joke about it. It's like you just do weights to like how you look and stuff. But it's very important for health. Even things like, and it mentions it here, but I can elaborate on it when it talks about muscle mass. If you have things like pneumonia, in many cases, old people aren't even strong enough to even cough, which is how they die. Or you have a fall and so on. So it's very important.
So with old people, they're not suggesting they get beefed up or anything. It's just mild weight lifting.
It's retaining muscle mass, and it's even more important actually for women because they have less muscle mass. Sorry to say that, I'll probably be in trouble. But they found that you were 47% less likely to die if you did exercise, and aerobic was 34%, and solely strength training was 22%, but a combination was best.
So it looks like, so can I leave it till I'm like 60 and then start going to the gym? Is that right?
Well, I think the way it works is every year after the age of 50, you lose 1% of your muscle mass if you don't exercise. So yeah, I mean, the sooner you start sort of exercising and lifting weights is great because it is cardio as well. I don't know why people separate the two. If you do, you know, circuits or something where you're doing different weightlifting exercises, you get out of breath, and also it doesn't just do, you know, if you're running, it's just a repetitive motion, it's just exercising your heart and your lungs. But if you're lifting weights, you're exercising your whole body, and it's strengthening your bones. So if you fall over, you're going to bounce back up instead of breaking your hip.
I'm not very strong, and those dumbbells are quite hard to pull up.
That's how
it works. So you lift them, and then it gets easier.
But what if you're not strong enough to lift them in the first place?
Start with body weight.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means.
Well, OK. The other thing is, just to add an extra stat quickly, also, men over 30 lose 1% of testosterone a year, and it's even higher if you read The Guardian.
Right, OK. And now we're going to move on to The Telegraph. And what is it about these hooved animals, Leo? What's going on here?
So hooved animals, or hoofed animals with high sex drives get more stressed in captivity, according to somebody who's had a pig locked in their basement for sexual needs. So apparently we've got 5 billion large hoofed animals known as ungulates. They're kept on farms, in zoos and safari parks, probably mostly farms, and they're amongst the world's most commonly kept animals, but captivity causes them stress. This manifests itself in stereotypic behaviours such as tail biting in pigs, or box walking and horses where they pace, just constantly pace around. You've seen this in zoos as well.
But what's this got to do with a sex drive?
So, basically, they've got to be allowed, if they've got a high sex drive, you've got to let them, don't have pop-ups coming up on their Pornhub. You've got to allow them to have some sort of sexual, breeding.
Otherwise they get depressed.
Otherwise they get depressed, they get stressed out. They've got hooves, so they can't, they can't do what an orangutan might do. And
I see what you're driving at.
Yeah. Imagine if you had hooves and you tried the chafing.
When it gets really bad, they start watching Jordan Peterson videos because he said he was the king of the incels. That was the joke.
Listen,
they are incels. They're
good point.
Very good pun. I'm worried about that. This article says that promiscuous animals such as buffaloes and pigs are becoming stressed. You can't call an animal promiscuous. Those aren't. That's like a moral judgment. They're basically slut-shaming these pigs.
Yeah, they're right to slut-shame them because these animals, some animals are good animals. They stay in, like geese, for example, swans. They stay in a sort of what do you call it? A
monogamous family unit.
Monogamous family unit.
Not all geese.
Not all geese.
And they can be quite violent, geese. I was once chased off a bridge by a bunch of geese, so I'm not having any of this. Anyway, story from the Daily Mail next. And, now this story, the relationship between the Brit and the Ukrainian refugee. We actually spoke about this a few months ago, Nick, if you remember, on this show. I don't know if you were on the show, but at the time, it was an incredible story. What's the update?
Well, I actually did an update on it a couple of nights ago. They keep giving me this story as some sort of trolling.
It's in the news cycle, that's why.
She didn't ask for none of this. Man who jilted mother of his 2 children, Ukrainian refugee, apologises for the affair, but she rules out ever getting back with him.
So just be clear, so a Ukrainian refugee was taken into a house, she had an affair with the husband, and he dumped his wife.
Yes, but then he dumped the Ukrainian woman herself and put
put
all her stuff in bin bags the other day. And I was having to go at him because he said he had a media profile, which I thought was a bit too much. But I think he now does. He's in the newspaper so much. I've watched a bit of his interview with Dan Wootton, and he's northern, so now I like him. I've changed my mind. I think he's a top lad now. And look, but sadly, his partner's not going to get back apparently. And she says, right now...
Do you blame her, though? I mean...
I don't really blame her, but I just think this my favourite quote is, right now I'm trying to recover from this whole thing and understand how I let this woman into my house. Well, because it was the war effort. She was taken in by the current thing. It's very simple, wasn't it, at the start?
Oh, I don't think it's the current thing. I think it's also the £400 a month you get for taking in a Ukrainian refugee.
We shouldn't really speculate about the motives of why they take... Weren't they just being compassionate?
No, to be fair, he said on the interview he'd have taken anyone in. It wasn't like he was just trying to look for young women. He said he'd have taken anyone in.
But
I believe him. No, he didn't know, and I totally believe him.
All the refugees from Ukraine tend to be young women. Like, for some reason, all the refugees from Ukraine are young women, and the ones from Syria are men. And I don't understand. Are the women doing all the fighting in Syria?
That's just a bonus. He can't be blamed for that.
Well, the wife is saying that it was the woman in question who had actually attempted to seduce the husband, and she started to notice that she was dressing in a provocative way when he was there, but not when she was there, and this kind of thing.
Let's blame the women.
No,
that's 3 men. I think we can say categorically.
That's not what I'm trying to do.
The man was blameless. Andrew Doyle quotes, the man was blameless.
Not what I'm saying.
Just the women.
But isn't it such a horrible story in a sense? Because this was meant to be a good deed. It was a really positive thing, and then it's completely devastated the family. 2 daughters, I believe.
But I mean, these things happen. Europe has taken in a lot of Ukrainian refugees, and I'm sure most of them haven't broken.
No, this is an exceptional story.
I love that. These things happen. That was also the guy's excuse when confronted about the effect. These things happen. But it's like the war itself, Andrew. It started off simple. We want to help Ukraine. Now it's all tangled up and complicated. Who blew up the Nord Stream 2?
It's real people.
It's a metaphor.
People are people. People are going to, some people are going to cheat. Some people are going to be bad people. Some people are going to be good people. So, people are people. I don't think it reflects at all on Ukraine.
I'm really good, but I was realistic enough to not bring in a refugee because it just doesn't work out.
Well, you live in a 1-bedroom flat.
Well,
you don't have the room.
And I think they'd turn it down, Nick. I think they'd rather be bombed.
But when they said it, 1 bedroom, TV star, any woman would be like, yeah, sounds like a great deal. Then they find out, well, I'm not going to say that, but they might not like GB, that's the only thing. Depends if they're more BBC fans.
Yeah, Star is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sense.
OK, we've just got time for one more story, I think, and this is from The Independent. And this is to do with, UK porn stars halt work amid syphilis outbreak.
Yes, syphilis is back. Adult film stars are calling for a union to be established because of syphilis brings a whole new meaning to the term scab, I suppose. I'm so sorry. Sorry, everyone.
Why
sorry,
did you do that in the last minute of the show? Just a horrible image.
I thought at least have a joke on it, and that's all I've really got. I thought that's good enough.
Isn't syphilis like a medieval disease? I mean, what are we going back?
It's what sailors got.
It's coming back though because basically the trend with people nowadays is to be ethically non-monogamous, which means you go out and have sex with lots of different people. But
is that the same as polyamorous?
It's the same sort of thing as polyamorous.
Right.
It used to be just called
cheating.
play in the field or whatever.
Yeah.
No, it's not cheating because everybody knows about it. It's supposed to be this ethical thing. But it means people are sharing partners, so we're all interconnected instead of being Presbyterian, puritanical, just husband and wife.
Posh cheating.
Posh cheating.
Yeah.
So the best way to avoid sexually transmitted infections is celibacy. That's really what you're suggesting.
Well, yeah, look at monkeypox. We found a lot of people who get monkeypox were having sex with like 50 people over the course of a weekend, and it's like,
Yeah, that might be why. Anyway, that's all we have time for. Thank you very much to my guests, Leo Kearse and to Nick Dixon. Headliners, of course, will be back tomorrow at 11 o'clock, where I'll be joined by Josh Howie and Kerry Marks. I will see you there. Farewell.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News. On Mark Dolan Tonight, we have